So we're going to start off today by showing you invoice inquiry, and this is really payment inquiry, where the user is going in and rather than calling your AP department and trying to track down payments and all the data and backup behind that, they're actually going to go in and be able to use the portal to go in and find that information out on their own. So I'm going to hand it over to Lynn for a few minutes to go through that, and then we'll circle back and we'll do the actual submitting of an invoice through the portal.
Sure.
Take it away, Lynn.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, or good morning, I guess, depending on where you are. I am going to, as Jim mentioned, show invoice inquiry capabilities, and I'm going to be using one of our clients' test sites to show you the various pieces of that invoice inquiry functionality. And as a little bit of backdrop, again, I'm using a test system, and so some of the data may not be recent. But hopefully I'll be able to show you enough to give you the flavor of what we're talking about. So some of the things that that happen behind the scenes when a vendor logs in is that their username has been associated with certain vendor numbers or company numbers or whatever number your particular company keys off of. But a user comes in and they may have one to any number of vendor numbers associated with them. And anything that they do in the portal is filtered by that. So any invoices they see would be filtered by that vendor number. Any invoices they submit would only be submitted on behalf of those vendor numbers, those sorts of things. And so when I come in, the vendor will land in the portal, and there are different menu options available if and when you're a vendor, and we have a number of different types of things that our customers do. In this particular instance, Dot Foods, and I don't know how many of you out there know about Dot Foods, but they are the largest redistributor in the United States. And so they do things like they purchase things from manufacturers and they turn around and they sell those to other distributors, so that the other distributors can then in turn go off and sell those off to the end users, or not the end users, but their customers. So coming in here, I'm actually going to go ahead and I'm going to select the invoice search. And what we try to do is we try to provide the users a number of different ways that they can get at the information. So in some instances, the vendors they have a very quick search they want to do. Maybe they want to know about invoices that have been paid within a certain amount of time, or number of invoices that have been processed within a certain amount of time. So I'm going to go ahead and pick this vouchered. So I'm going to pick 90 days. And it's simply selecting that and then coming over and hitting submit. And in the background, we're actually going against, in this instance, a PeopleSoft system to go or their test system to go and pull back results. And so this is pretty powerful. You get a lot of information back. You see invoice dates, and all of this is configurable based on the information that you as a company want to communicate with your vendors and to share with your vendors. So again, very quick way to do a search. A lot of times vendors just want to come in, and in some of our implementations, we have a third option over here that's invoices received within a certain amount of time. That's a very popular one to provide as well. Coming in for the second line, this is really focusing in on specific invoice information. So you'll notice we've got, we allow searches by invoice number, to and from dates and amount to and froms. And any of the things that you see here from a search perspective are also configurable. So if there's another invoice field that you want to provide, we can absolutely do that. In fact, one of the customers that we're implementing currently has added a layer on here called AP company, and that's an internal field within their organization because they want to have that additional filter to allow their vendors to hone in that way. I'm going to go ahead and in this instance, and I'm going to go ahead and pick, I want to see what the status is of all the invoices that I submitted in the month of May. So again, I'm going to go select those, and also we give the users the ability to sort their results. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to sort the invoice number lowest to highest. I'm going to go ahead and hit submit. And of course, I forgot to clear my criteria, so I'm going to try that again. If I could type would be really nice. Go ahead and I'm going to sort. I'll click submit. And you'll see a number of results. And if I come down here in the bottom, it says that I have 561 invoices that have been that are in the system from the month of May. Couple things I can do from here. First one is I can go ahead and download these results to Excel. A lot of times vendors like to do that because then they can take that and bump that up against perhaps an Excel from their accounts receivable system. They may be able to format this download and reformulate it and upload it to their accounts receivable system, which sometimes helps with cash application. So that's one nice benefit. They also have the ability from these results to create a dashboard card. And what creating a dashboard card does is it really allows the vendor to, I'm going to go ahead and do this, May invoices. Basically, it allows the vendor to save this search, and then the next time that they come in, they could just have to click a dashboard card. They won't have to enter any of the search criteria or anything like that, and they'll be able to go and get those results. And when I go back out, I'll show you that dashboard card. Some of the other things that happen on this results listing is we provide the ability for the vendors to get at different information. And this is really configurable based on every client. Everyone is different. So in the case of DOT, for their AP transactions, there might be various pieces of backup that come into play. In their world, they have invoices called miscellaneous accounts receivable, and that's actually where DOT is charging certain amounts of things to their vendors. Could be things like samples, could be things like when they go to make a delivery at one of their customers, if they have to wait, there might be an additional wait time. And so those all are processed in, and so there may be something particular that is associated with this invoice. So I'm going to go ahead and I'll click this View MAR Report Data, and I actually went out and I went to a different system behind the scenes at DOT and pulled in information from an AS400. And this basically corresponds with the invoice that I was just showing you. This is the actual data backup. So this is where DOT is trying to provide information to their vendor as to what this invoice is and why it was a deduction from the overall payment. You'll notice it was a deduction of $1,700 plus. Let's see here. We've talked about downloading to Excel, we talked about the dashboard card, and we talked about these ellipses. So I think what I'll do is we'll move on. And again, these are all configurable, but one of the other ways that, that the users can search is just by a PO number. So I'm going to go ahead and type in a PO number here, and I'll hit submit. And what that'll do is it'll go and pull all the invoices with that PO number. You'll notice it's a like search. We get a lot of questions regarding whether or not our systems allow like searches, and they do. They're back-end like searches, but really, really powerful tool that allows the vendors to come in and see all the invoices associated with the purchase order in that instance where you've got multiple invoices per purchase order. And thought I'd come in here. And in this particular example, I want to show you the AP adjustments. So when I click on the AP adjustments, you'll notice that detail comes up. And what this detail provides is this is telling the vendor that when DOT processed their invoice, there was an adjustment amount of $57.03, and the reason was because there was a shortage. It goes through and it really, we can present through any information available to us from the source system. So again, in this case, this would be PeopleSoft because that's where they do their AP processing and where they handle all of their PO processing. One of the last and frankly the most popular ways that the system is used is by AR folks at the vendors wanting to know what the backup is for the check number. So instead of sending all the remittance advice or potentially pages and pages of things that were paid on a particular check, the vendors can now come in and get their own remittance advice in their own time. So by just typing in the check number and hitting submit, you're seeing all of the things that were paid on that particular check. And again, as you might imagine, being able to go in and see all the various different types of backup associated with each individual line is really helpful, and it's a really good way for the vendors to stay productive on their end when they're trying to apply that cash out. One of the last things coming off of invoice inquiry is the ability, and I don't know how many of you out there actually have this, but is the ability for the vendor to submit a dispute. So they're looking at this check, they're looking at everything that's been paid and credited, frankly, and maybe they come down to one of them and they decide, you know what, I just disagree. I have something that I have to say about this because I don't agree with this deduction of $389.86. Or quite possibly, maybe they didn't agree that this $102.77, maybe they should have been paid more or less. So coming off of here, the vendor has the ability to submit a dispute. So after clicking through that, you'll notice that a lot of the information is already populated. So anything that we have, we go ahead and populate for that particular vendor. What the vendor would do is they would come in and they'd be able to pick from any list of categories and descriptions, and those are very specific to you. We work with all of our clients to create that list. And so maybe there's lack of detail. And then in the issue description, maybe proof of performance, no detail provided. Maybe those are the categories and issues. You'll notice if I pick an invalid program and rebate, my options for descriptions change. So again, that's dynamic, and that's something that we do specifically with our customers. So the vendor has gone ahead and they've said, okay, invalid program amount, let's say. They would come in and they could enter in some comments, and if there's backup that they'd like to provide, they can drag and drop or attach a file, and then they can hit complete. And the nice part about this is, instead of the vendor calling you and telling you about this, or sending you one of 1,000 emails trying to communicate with you that this dispute exists, this is as simple as this is. In the background, we have a workflow system that can help facilitate processing of these disputes and allow that communication back and forth to the vendor about this dispute via the portal. Or we can pass this off to potentially an internal workflow that you have that already has those capabilities. Jim, I think that was it from the invoice inquiry perspective, unless there's something that I missed.
Lynn, we had a couple questions.
Sure.
In for you here. So one of them is there a vendor landing page that provides open payables as of the inquiry date?
And that's a configurable piece. It actually, so I mentioned the creation of that dashboard card. We can either the vendor can create one for themselves, or as a matter of course, as part of the configuration, we absolutely can create a specific card on the landing page that lists outstanding payables and would allow the vendors to then click in and then get a detailed list of those payables.
Great. And then we had another question. Does this system sit on top of SAP and JDE?
It can, certainly. We have portals that sit on top of SAP. We've got systems that sit on top of JD Edwards, PeopleSoft, Oracle, you name it. we've done it. So yes, on SAP.
Great, and we do have a number of SAP customers, so
Mm-hmm.
As well as JDE customers. Those are actually two of the more popular ones we see
Mm-hmm.
out there that we've integrated in our experience anyway. So hopefully that helps. Super, thank you, Lynn.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and switch now to the actual. I'm going to make myself presenter here and show my screen. So are we seeing a US food screen here?
Yep.
Super, excellent. So what we're going to show here now is I went a little out of order, and I appreciate Lynn indulging me on that. Um, so the actual using a vendor portal to go ahead and get invoices into the system as well. Obviously, a lot of organizations are really on a drive to kind of cut back on certainly paper invoices. People have been trying to cut back on that and been pretty successful on that heretofore, as well as a lot of things coming in through email and in various formats, PDF formats through email, which still has to be kind of broken out. And a lot of times they're being printed, they're being scanned. So to the extent that we can capture invoice information coming in, through a portal, and really help streamline and automate that process, then the better off we're going to be. I think, as you'll see as we go through this, it's not for everybody, or not. I won't say not for everyone, but not for every invoice. I mean, there are certain invoices we're probably going through a portal, at least on this web form portion of it, wouldn't be practical. But there certainly is an application for it, and we'll talk about that. So obviously, I've logged in, and interestingly, Lynn was just showing you, inquiry from Dot Foods, and Dot Foods and US Foods have a relationship, and Dot Foods is coming through the portal now, and then you'll see when their name comes up, and it knows from the login, obviously, who it is. So it's Dot Foods. I go ahead and click on that, and what it's going to do here is give a list of remit tos. In this case, obviously, there's only one remit to address that Dot uses. But a lot of folks have multiple remit to addresses. So once the name comes up, we know who it is. They can select, which one, and it'll populate that in the field. You can see over here, this form, and again, highly configurable. You're going to hear that word configurable throughout the demonstrations today, because everything we do it's not out of the box. These are all very configurable to meet your process, to meet your look and feel, whatever your business requirements are. So in this particular case, we have this web form where they can come in, they can submit, they can type in. And I'm not going to do a lot of typing here and bore you with my terrible typing, but excuse me, they could type in their invoice number, date, put in any terms that are relevant on this invoice, any cash discounts they might want to apply. And then if this was, for instance, there are a number of people that will use a web form that are maybe one or two line items. It's very easy to come in, go ahead and fill out the information here, the descriptions, quantity, unit measures, price, and send it on its way. So for instance, ICG, when we invoice our customers, typically it's one or two line items. It's a maintenance thing or a monthly subscription fee or whatever the case may be. Very easy for us to log on, fill that out, just one or two line items, hit go, and submit it, or add a note if we want, submit it, and off it goes. And it's in that electronically now going into the payable system on your end. More popular though, however, is because we have a lot of trade vendors, a lot of PO-based vendors. We go ahead and do what we call PO flip, where we would go in and we would go in and type in the PO number, so you don't have to enter all those lines. You would tab out, and as you see, it's going to go ahead and populate that. It's going out to the system, be it again SAP, JD Edwards that we just talked, or whatever system you're using. It's going to pull those line items as well as the ship to and any other relevant information, and it's going to go ahead and populate it. So it's not a matter of someone having to sit there and put all these line items in. It's simply going to go ahead and pull those PO line items, populate it. Again, you can add a note if you wish. You can add any kind of sales allowance codes you might have, any other additional charges. The system will do the math, and you'll notice here where you have a lot of zeros and nothing's filled in. That's a point of configuration. In this particular case, US Foods decided, because in the food industry, on certain food items, it's very dynamic. If you think of things like dairy and milk and things of that nature, the pricing can change day to day. So on certain pricing, they wanted to make sure that they got the best price available. So rather than them populating the unit price off the PO, they actually allow the vendor, actually not just allow, but require the vendor to go in and plug that unit price in. And if they get a more favorable price, then obviously they're going to accept that price. That is more the exception than the rule. In most cases, particularly on the PO flip, it's going to populate everything. It's just strictly going to pull it off of the PO, along with the unit prices, quantities, and such. Populate it, and obviously once you hit submit and you send it on its way, in this particular case, you now have captured everything you need for that invoice. It matches the PO, so your matching is essentially done. And it sends a notification. Once you do this, it sends a notification back to the vendor and letting them know that, hey, we've received your invoice, and your invoice is in the system. So now they don't have to call AP. They have the comfort of knowing their invoice is in the system. It's going to get paid. You've received it. They don't have to call and ask you if you received it. It's matching. So on your end, again, you don't have that manual data entry, the scanning, or any of those processes you may be going through today. It's simply all going to match up. There are a lot of some unique use cases for this as well. So not only like in PO flip, or even if it's a non-PO and you're going to go in and key in one or two line items. In the case of US Foods, it was interesting because they started with payment inquiry in their case in terms of implementation, and they put inquiry in because they were getting a lot in their vendor service center. They were getting a ton of calls, and they really, I don't remember the exact numbers, but they really slashed their, or were able to redeploy. They actually didn't cut the bodies out, but they redeployed about half, 50% of the people they had in the vendor service center just by putting in that payment inquiry, because it stopped a lot of the calls. All the information was there, as you saw from what Lynn showed you. And they were very reluctant to put in this invoice submit, because they just didn't see, particularly with their trade vendors, using it. Well, what they found out is that wasn't the case. It was very easy for them to use. They weren't going to use it for everything, but certainly with the PO flip, they have a lot of EDI, as some of you may have as well. And where this was a benefit, if they had a dropped line in the EDI transmission, rather than have to go back the time and the expense of retransmitting an EDI file over, they could just go ahead in those drop lines. They could just pull this thing up, key them in, and away they go. So despite their initial reluctance to go forward on that, what they found was they were getting about 4,000 of those a month coming through, which was pretty significant for them, or 4,000 a week, excuse me, that were coming in through this invoice submit. So it really provided a real benefit for them. So, Lynn, anything I missed on that?
No, Jim, I think, well, actually, the only thing I would add is, and Jim's mentioned this, but a number of the fields that you see are configurable. One of the most configurable ones, and a lot of times we get questions on, is the terms field. Some people are concerned that, oh, the vendor is allowed to enter terms and that just feeds through to our ERP. And that is absolutely a configuration point. We can allow them to freeform terms in and pass it as an informational field up to your ERP. We can do things like only present terms that are better for you than net 30. So there's a lot of variability, and we've seen it all on those terms. So that's just an example of more flexibility in the forms that we provide that help us almost cater and customize to your need. It's not a development customization. It's just a configuration on our side.
Super. Thank you, Lynn. And you'll also see here, just before we transition over to the vendor onboarding application, and then we'll circle back to the PO dispatch. But you'll notice there's a number of tabs here, and again, just for the sake of time, we won't go through all of them. But both DOT and US Foods and many of our clients who use our vendor portals also have case inquiry. And case inquiry is a dispute. So if you're disputing, a charge, a short pay, or something that's on there, the vendor can go in and launch a dispute right from the portal. Again, not having to call your vendor service center, or calling your AP department. They can actually launch an inquiry there, and they can also track the inquiries. SIS, which is Sales Incentive Systems, certainly some people participate in those and have a way to use that. So there's a lot of flexibility and a lot of things that you can put on that portal, and depending on who the user is and what rights they have, is what buttons they'll see. Everyone may not have the ability to go in and start a case or do an SIS inquiry. Some people may just have inquiry capabilities and can't submit, and all of that's controlled and can kind of be talked through. So great. Michael, going to go ahead and pass it over to you, and we're going to go ahead now. I'm going to show a little bit on the administrative side of the house, and again on the whole procure-to-pay cycle. Obviously, one of the first things in the cycle is onboarding vendors to bring them in. That's a big part from not only procurement departments, but also the back office and AP. Certainly have a stake in that game. So, and I think you'll learn a lot from that. So, Michael, I'm going to go ahead and make you a presenter here. You ready to take it away?
Yep. Thanks, Jim.
Excellent.
Oops. Okay, cool. So yeah, I'm gonna log in, and what we're gonna go through the vendor-facing side of onboarding here. So as you've heard a lot, this is a highly configurable solution here. We would work with you to determine all the things you would need to collect, all the information and data you need to collect to onboard a new vendor. So initially, when the vendor logs in, they get a visual cue of where they're at in the process of getting onboarded. You see the bulletin section here. This is just kind of a news update, anything you want to communicate to the vendor up front. There's a nice feature about this. It has an expiration date. So, I mean, we just recently celebrated Labor Day. You could have just a message saying when your offices might be closed through that holiday, and then set the expiration date. So the day after Labor Day, when you're open again, it just appears on its own. So the vendor won't be seeing a Labor Day message in October. So just a quick feature there. So when we click into, we're going to see these 14 categories. And again, you might have more or less depending on all the information you need to collect. And there's a nice feature too, is everything you're going to see is available. So if you started with a more simple solution, but you grew and wanted to add things that you see here today, you could do that down the road. So we'll jump right into the first category here is company information. So this is where we're going to start collecting information, just general information about the company. There's some important questions here that drive logic down the road. The main one being, are you based in the US? So when they click yes here, it's going to prompt the system to set up a W-9 tax form later in the onboarding process. If they click no, obviously, then we're going to jump into the W-8s. There's some other questions here. If they change this to a manufacturer, it can prompt some other questions. So a lot of logic in the system, and again, highly configurable. We can work with you on exactly what you want to collect in this section, and pretty much every section that you're going to see. So we'll jump ahead to the next section, address information. Pretty straightforward. Got your primary address, remit to address, and they can add as many remit to addresses as necessary. So a bigger company that might have multiple remit to addresses, pretty simple to add more of those. Jumping ahead to contact information. Again, pretty straightforward. We're going to get the contact you're dealing with, the title. This is something that's really helpful. I know some of our clients and their ERP systems, their contact information can be pretty light. They might not have emails, phone numbers, or know even what type of contact they're dealing with. So these checkboxes are helpful to know who you're working with in case you need to contact them. And again, another point of configurability, these checkboxes, we would work out with you on exactly what type of contacts you want to be collecting. And we can require as many as 1, 2, 3, as many contacts as you'd like to have. Similar to the remit to addresses, it's pretty simple to add another contact just by clicking the add button.
And that's pretty important because, as Michael said, indicated, what the feedback we've gotten and why this page is so popular is this really is a hole in a lot of ERP systems. They're not not great at collecting and storing contact information, and depending on who in your organization may need it, we found that there's just a real need to have greater depth of contact information, be it AR on the AR side of the house, the sales side of the house, a company officer, depending on what your needs are, to get a hold of them or obtain information. So that contact page, as simple as it may seem, it really does provide a kind of a gap for a lot of our clients.
Cool. So our next screen here is payment details. So this client chose to present terms up front. These terms might be different depending on the type of vendor we're dealing with. So we can work with you on that, and depending on the type of vendor, change those terms as necessary. We can ask if they're providing ACH. I know a lot of our clients are trying to move to that, and then collect bank information from there. When it gets to this point, I know there's quite a bit of security involved, and obviously when we get to bank numbers and sensitive material, only the eyes that need to see it will see it. And I'm not a technical guy, but I know that there's a lot of encryption and security revolving around this information here.
Again, and on this page, just go ahead and stand there for one quick second, Michael. This page again is an area where everybody really configures it a little bit differently depending on the kind of information you need. You know, if you have a P card program, if you're selecting, you know, electronic invoicing, if you have some kind of a programming in place, and you what formats, using EDI. So, you know, payment details is really becomes very unique to each organization. That's not one of those kind of cookie cutter things. So this page tends to look a little different. Also up top, you see where the payment terms are and where it puts standard terms. Also for a lot of organizations, really the vendor categorization, kind of stratifying your vendors, if you will, you know, based on the login, they may see different information. In other words, if you have a category of vendors or a group of vendors, you know, you may have trade vendors, you may have other things like lawn maintenance or non-trade vendors, and they may have different terms. So there's a lot of ways we can configure this in terms of the information that they see and the information that's valuable to you. And certainly the payment details. This is really where you have that bridge between procurement, excuse me, and accounts payable, because this is really helping with the vendor setup and getting accounts payable to a point where, you know, once they're on board, they're going to be able to conduct business and make payments. Sorry, Michael.
Okay. No, yeah. All right, moving right along. This is our sales tax licenses and permit section. Now, obviously, this is unique to Affinity, which is a gaming company, so gaming licenses wouldn't apply to every organization. And what this is really showing is the ability to upload documents and pass those documents back and forth between you and your vendor. So it might not be sales permits, it might be a contract, any sort of business license, things like that. Gives you the ability, the vendor, the ability to upload those permits right to you, and then you can have them collected. A big key here is the expiration dates. So you can see in a couple weeks this expiration is coming up. The system automatically tracks any document or anything with an expiration date, and we can work with you to set up notifications about that expiration date. So maybe 60 days out, just a general notification goes out to your vendor saying, you got a couple months, this permit is coming up for expiration. If no action's taken, maybe 30 days out, another notification is sent out. If it gets to 15 days, 7 days, those notifications can escalate. And a notification might even go to someone in your organization internally. So maybe a week out, you want to get someone internally on this so that they can contact the vendor and get the updated information so there's no lapse in compliance there.
And again, you can see now where the kind of that expanding that list of contacts that you're gathering can be important, because depending on what it is that is expiring, whether it's a permit or a COI or something of that nature, is, you know, you want that contact information, so you're notifying those people automatically by email. It doesn't have to be a manual process. When that comes down, if we haven't seen an updated you know, permit and it's 90 days out, it's automatically going to trigger an email to whomever you designated. So having that contact information to be able to send those is really important, as well as Michael indicated, you know, as it gets closer, escalating it to buyers and people like that internally who are going to have a stake in making sure these things are you know, renewed.
Cool. So we're jumping to products and services. Again, highly configurable page here. We have some clients that want all 50 states in a drop-down, or they could select all 50 states or just general regions that they serve. Some questions along the line here to get some more information. Do you provide food consumables? If that's a yes, you might have food and safety documents or paperwork that you need done. So when you click yes there, it can prompt that later on. Provide construction repair, things like this. If they collect yes, it might prompt them for additional insurance or a higher insurance level down the road. So a lot of configurability here, and just getting a general idea of what they're going to provide to you. Affiliate subsidiaries, pretty straightforward. Some of our clients really like to collect this, others not yet. Again, it's something if you don't need right away, but you'd like to collect down the road, it's easy for us to go turn this page right on. References, here's one where this can be optional or required, 1, 2, 3, really up to you. So, but pretty straightforward, putting in the contact information of any references that you might want to collect. Ownership and diversity, this one's becoming more popular. So if you are collecting diversity, it's pretty straightforward here. We've got different ways to collect that, whether it be certified, self-certified, or pending. Then we start collecting the certificate number, the agency, and the expiration date. And again, anytime there's an expiration date, there's automatic tracking within the system. Insurance, so this is where they're going to provide their COIs. Again, configurable here, where you can list any type of insurance that you need to collect. We can work with you on all those. There are things like you need to request a waiver. They might say yes because they're selling you pencils, things like that, where they wouldn't need as much insurance coverage. The expiration dates again are tracked, and notifications would be sent out on the scale that you choose.
So this is again, depending on the type of business you're in, this page can look very different and have a lot of variability, depending on the types of coverages. I know, for instance, we had a client working with that was in the food manufacturing, was part of their business. It wasn't their entire business, but they had a lot of food safety types of things that they had to deal with. So their insurance needs were certainly far greater than someone that was, say, in the gaming business, for instance. So depending on the type of business you're in and the type of insurance you need, again, it kind of goes back to that categorization. So if you had a certain vendor that was logging in, and that vendor was providing some raw materials in the manufacturing of a food product, you know, the things that you may collect here may be a little different than, again, as Michael indicated, you know, your local Staples is delivering pencils. So again, there's a lot of configurability and variability in terms of what they'd actually see, in terms of what the requirements are on what you're collecting.
Yeah, and easy for them to upload the COIs right here. Easy for them to upload the documents necessary that you need to collect. And we can transfer any of those to a PDF if you needed a hard copy for any reason. Sustainability, again, easy to just upload a file right here with their certificate. If you're tracking sustainability, again, something that a lot of clients maybe don't have right up front, but maybe turn on later on down the road. And finally, we get to the tax page here. So this mimics the IRS W-9 form. So they're going to fill out this information. They're going to select what type of company they are, what type of LLC they are. Then they're going to put in their EIN and the number. This number first is going to make sure that it matches exactly with this business name. So for instance, if they left off the LLC, it wouldn't let them go forward until they put that in and matched exactly. And then they would click verify tax ID here. And this is where we do a third-party punch out to a company called TinCheck. And they check against about 30 different watch lists and things like that. Terrorist watch lists, IRS watch lists, fraudulent watch lists, all sorts of things like that. So that's included, that third-party punch out is included in the system.
And again, pretty important here, because as I don't know how many people we have on board that are, you know, directly involved in the AP process. I'm sure quite a few. You know, as you know now, that whole area of TinCheck can be quite cumbersome if it's not automated. if the vendor sends something, and as Michael indicated, if the actual name of the IRS is, has an LLC on the end and they don't add that, it's not going to verify. And again, then the onus becomes on you to do a lot of chasing to find out and get that information. It can be a very time consuming and labor intensive process in a lot of organizations. So this really puts the onus back on the vendor. Again, this is back in vendor self-service. They need to provide the information that needs to be accurate, because if that LLC wasn't on there and the user hit verify tax ID, they're going to get a message back that it doesn't verify, that vendor does not exist, at least under the information they've submitted. So again, it's up to them to go back, oh yeah, right, I forgot to put the LLC for our official name, whatever the case may be. And then once they click that, it verifies, it comes back. You know that they are who they say they are. That checks out, be it an EIN or a social security number. And again, with those other checks on other lists and other compliance things, if something comes up where they do show up on a list, where you need to be alerted, you're gonna get a message back telling you, hey, they showed up on a foreign list of some kind or on some list, and let you know, and then you can take whatever action. So pretty important stuff, that the verifying that tax ID gives you a lot of information, and really in that vendor self-service mode.
Yeah, and then once they complete the information and the tax ID is verified and it goes through the 10 check process and it all comes back clean, they'll type in their name here. The IRS accepts that as a legal signature. If there are other documents or contracts, things of that nature, non-disclosure agreements that you need a signature for, we do work with DocuSign. So that's an option to have secured electronic signatures within the system there as well. So when we click next, we submit the profile. It would then route internally to you, and we set up queues based on the approvals you need internally. So there could be, a handful to quite a few, whether it be, compliance, legal review, things of that nature. So it can go right through a workflow on your end to get the vendor all set up and approved. And once all that information is verified and approved, they're ready to go. There's some cool features on the internal side as well. One that I think is one of the best features is what we call form admin, which actually gives you the ability to go in and tweak the system a little bit without any help from our IT department or your IT department. You can go in and change something maybe that's optional. Maybe those references at first you have them optional, but now you want to require 1, 2, or 3 references. Well, you can go in and with a click of a button just change that from optional to required, and then that vendor is going to have to supply those references for you. So there's some cool features like that on the internal side, but I think that pretty much covers the vendor side.
I appreciate it.
Yeah,
appreciate it, Michael. No, that's good. So again, on the vendor-facing side, you can see the power of again, vendor self-service, throwing it back on them, let them supply the information, upload documentation that you require from them. You can also post documents out there that you want them to download and sign and get back to you, NDAs, contracts, things of that nature. So the portal provides a lot of flexibility for that collaboration where you're passing information back and forth, documents back and forth, and again, there's a lot more to this, and anyone who wants to do a deeper dive on any one of these, kind of subject matters, let us know, because there's we can certainly do a lot deeper dive and show you more. We had a question here, so Lynn, I'll throw this one at you if you don't mind. For existing vendors, can this information be pulled from the existing ERP and require a vendor to periodically update?
From a vendor onboarding perspective,
yes,
yes, we can work with your IT department and map that information in from the existing system into ours, and then we can send automatic updates out. Let's say you want the W-9s updated every 7 years, we could do that. If you want them to come check their addresses every year just to freshen them up, we can send emails out for that. And I think Michael mentioned this as well, if there's a specific vendor that you need them to update a piece of information, you can actually go in and initiate an an update task manually to go then pull updated information from the ERP and send a notification to the vendor for them to log in to update that information.
Excellent. And again, as a business practice, as a best practice, it's, we have vendors that require, some of their vendors at a minimum every 2 years to go in and just update stuff. Obviously, they're not going to go in on the portal and refill out the whole profile, but certainly there's things that may have changed. Contacts change, insurance coverage there's various things throughout there that may change. So kind of as a best practice, it's a good idea to kind of run existing vendors through this. I mean, certainly we can populate with what you already have in the vendor master, as Lynn was talking about, and map that through. But it's also a good idea on some kind of a periodic basis to have vendors. You don't want to do it all at once and necessarily clog the system, but have some kind of a rotating system where they're going on there at least every couple of years and updating that information. It helps you have a clean vendor master and use this portal as a way to do that pretty efficiently. Super. Thank you, Michael. Appreciate that.
Yep. Thank you, Jim.
So last thing here is we're going to go into PO dispatch and update, getting a little more on the procurement side of the house here. We're going to go ahead and sign in. And it's a pretty busy page here, but again, a different look. And we're hoping by showing you a variety of different portals coming from a variety of different customers as well as demo systems. There's really a lot of, again, it's that whole theme of configurability, of presenting information in a way that's most important to you, that's going to work best for you. So the different flair and flavor you've seen to these different systems we've shown you, they all have a different look and feel, but they're all meeting the needs and the requirements really of our clients. So this one is really pretty simple, basic concept. I mean, this is the point where now we're dispatching purchase orders out to vendors, and trying to automate that process as much as possible. And a lot of what happens in these applications I'm about to show you really happens in the background more so than what I'm going to demonstrate and show you. So in this particular case, again, when you're actually dispatching a purchase order, the procurement department, they need to send a PO to a vendor. They'll go ahead and they'll release that, again, using that contact information that they got from that onboarding. They have that contact information on file, and they'll go ahead and they'll send that out. This particular view, like every view you've seen so far, is the vendor view. Now, typically a vendor, unless they're a huge vendor, is not going to see this many POs. They're going to come in, they're going to look, and they say, let's go ahead and view the PDF. You'll notice there's a number of statuses here: new, accepted, rejected. Accepted means they've already viewed this, they've accepted it, so we get on down the road. This would only change if they get a new revision or a new release. That's something that come in that they would have to look at again. They've rejected some. So in this particular case, we're simply going to, click on the PDF, which would be a demonstration of the purchase order. This is a demo system, so it's not going to look like a real purchase order. The user will go ahead and take a look at that and go ahead and view it and see what they think. Close out of that. Now they can either accept it, reject it, or answer for later. Accept it, obviously, they hit accept. That information is fed into your system. They've accepted the PO's in place, and they can go ahead and execute on that. If they decide they reject it for whatever reason, again, it demands or requires that they give you a reason. They just can't reject it and not tell you anything. So they can just say, pricing off, whatever the case may be, and submit that. Again, that message goes back to the buyer, so now the buyer can start the collaboration with the vendor to get that issue resolved. And you'll notice again the different statuses will come up to reflect what activity is going on there. Again, the last thing is they could do is answer later, meaning they're not quite sure, they need to go confer with somebody, and they can answer later. And again, that's going to go ahead and say viewed only, and it's in there and it's pending. One thing these applications have that's pretty important is they all have timers. So if you send a purchase order out to a vendor and they didn't do anything with it, it just sat here in this new status and no one looked at it, there's going to be a timer on that that's going to start tracking, how long it's been sitting there with no activity whatsoever. And that's kind of important as well, because you don't want things just to, just to kind of be sitting there. So that would, again, alert a buyer to say, hey, look, you issued a PO, you sent it to this person, maybe they're on vacation, maybe the contact's incorrect. But again, it's now giving the buyer some reason to take action. So pretty straightforward. They can search by, filter it by PO number, revision, release, ship to, any of that. But again, I think most vendors aren't going to have quite this many. And this was really based on one of our clients that use this, is Duke Energy, who has really, their vendors would see this many POs because they deal with a lot of big vendors who have a lot of activity going on. Anything to add there, Lynn, before we move on?
Nope, I think you covered it all, Jim.
Super. So then we're running short on time here. I'm going to go into the PO updates. PO updates is really a very unique kind of thing, and this is the case. And then again, not for everybody. So some of you sitting out there viewing this going to go, yeah, I don't see where this would work. Really what this is for, this is a very proactive way, and again, this is based on an application we did with Duke Energy, and we're implementing for someone else at the moment, where it's important to them because their supply chains need to be very precise because of the nature of their business. I mean, if they have a nuclear plant going on and they have maintenance and that plant's down, every day that plant's down, it's costing them money. So they want to know from their vendors, are you going to deliver what you said you're going to deliver, when you're going to deliver it? And that becomes very important to them. So what happens is, again, a lot goes on behind the scenes, but there's an application that runs in the background, I think twice a week in the case of Duke Energy, and says automatically, okay, we need to know this information from these vendors, and it would send that out and have different levels of expediting. So we'll go ahead and click one just to kind of show you how that functionality works. Say update selected. So the vendor would see this, vendor view, come in, okay, they're saying they want an update on all of this stuff. So let's just pick one. So status, it's going to ask what the status is of delivery. Is there a new delivery date to be shipped? It's already shipped. We're fine. You need to resend a PO. And again, configurable, whatever works for you. So say there's a new delivery date. Vendor comes in and they want a reason. How come? Well, there's been some kind of a supplier day on their end. They're going to pick a new delivery date, put it out there in the future, and then it requires remarks, whatever. Sorry about that. Whatever the case may be, and then go ahead and send that update, and you'll notice that disappears from the list. So again, it just provides the information so your supply chains stay very smooth. It's being very proactive with the vendor community to go out and say, only on certain things that are critical, where are these at? Are we going to get them on time? If not, when are we going to get them? What's the problem? Why is the problem? Rather than wait, it doesn't show up, someone's calling, and then it's kind of too late. So I went over that very quickly, and there's a lot more to it, but I won't go into all of that. I think you can see the value of that. Once again, a lot of different filters in terms of searching for things and finding things. But anything additional you want to add, Lynn? Are we good?
Nope, I think you got it all.
Excellent. Well, super. We're coming to a close here, so we're about out of our allotted time. Again, I do want to thank everyone who attended today. We always appreciate your participation. We had a lot of good questions. I do want to encourage you to go ahead and reach out. You can come in through our website or and send any other additional questions you may think of that, a lot of times people I know I do all the time, I'll forget to ask a question. So anything we can do to answer things, let us know. This has been recorded, and I know we did have one question. They wanted to share this. Can we get on a recorded webinar? Absolutely. So all the attendees will be getting a recording of this. It'll be a couple of days, and we'll compile that, and that will go out to you. And again, I also want to put out the offer that I did earlier, and to make sure anyone, if you want some, one-on-one time with your company and your employees and your folks to go through any one of these modules or anything that's important to you and talk to us, we'd be more than happy to set up a demonstration to talk to your team and kind of go one-on-one. So don't hesitate to reach out. So thank you to my colleagues for all their great work today, and thank you for being a great audience, and hope to see you down the road. Thank you very much.